You've probably felt this way before. You prayed, you hoped, you waited, but it seemed like God was silent. You asked yourself, is God even listening? Is he doing anything? Has he forgotten me? Days go by and nothing changes. The door hasn't opened. The dream still feels far away. The promise hasn't come to pass. And then the doubts creep in. Did I do something wrong? Should I just give up? But what if I told you God is working the most powerfully in the silence? Just because you can't see it doesn't mean he's not moving. Sometimes the best things God does happen behind the curtain of waiting. Don't confuse God's silence with his absence. Hold on to your faith, because what he's preparing for you is worth the wait. 10 years ago, I was sitting in my car outside a small coffee shop, staring blankly at the steering wheel, feeling like my world had just collapsed. I had just lost the job I thought would define my future, the career I had dreamed of, the path I had worked so hard for. It was gone in a moment. I remember gripping the steering wheel, trying to hold back tears, asking God, why? Why would you let this happen? I felt like a failure, not just in my work, but in life. I had prayed, I had fasted, I had believed, and yet everything fell apart. That moment in the car felt like rock bottom, and the silence from heaven, it was deafening. But what I didn't know is that 10 years later, I'd be running my own business, working with purpose, waking up every morning excited, and finally living in the calling God had for me. Sometimes the breaking is part of the building, and the waiting, it's where God does his deepest work. What I couldn't see in that car, in the moment of heartbreak and confusion, was that God had already begun writing a better story for my life. One that didn't look like the plan I had, but was far greater than anything I could have imagined. I thought I had lost everything that mattered, but in reality, God was removing what was temporary to prepare me for something eternal. In the months that followed, nothing seemed to change on the outside. No dream job, no breakthrough, just a quiet routine of trying to stay faithful. I took small jobs, I volunteered at church. I went back to school, not knowing why, just feeling a nudge in my spirit. There were days I still asked, God, where are you? But slowly I started to notice the shift. Not outside me, but inside. My heart grew quieter, my trust deeper, my joy less dependent on circumstances. Years passed, and then one day I met her. The woman who would become my wife, not in a grand dramatic moment, but in a small, ordinary encounter that God had clearly orchestrated. We fell in love, not just because we were compatible, but because we had both been prepared in the waiting. Wounds had healed, pride had been stripped, faith had grown. We were ready for each other. Today we have a beautiful family, 2 kids who light up our world, and a marriage that is far from perfect, but rooted in grace and purpose. Looking back now, I can say this with all my heart. God was working the whole time. In the silence, he was planting. In the waiting, he was pruning. In the disappointment, he was redirection. I didn't lose my calling that day in the car. I found the beginning of the real one. And now every laugh of my children, every conversation with my wife, every morning I wake up knowing I'm walking in purpose. It's all a testimony to this truth. God's silence is not his absence. His delays are not his denials. And his timing, it's always perfect. So if you're in that car moment right now, heartbroken, confused, waiting, trust me, God is working behind the scenes. And one day you'll look back and say, that's exactly where it all began. What gave me strength during those years of waiting wasn't just the glimpses of hope. It was the promises in God's word. I held on to Isaiah 40:31 like a lifeline. But they who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. That verse didn't promise instant answers. It didn't say we'd soar right away. It said those who wait on the Lord. There is power in waiting, not because waiting feels good, but because waiting forces us to trust. And trust builds faith. And faith moves mountains. I started to realize I wasn't the only one who had to wait. Look at David, anointed as king in his youth, but spent 15 years running from Saul before he ever touched the throne. Abraham was promised a son, but had to wait 25 years to hold Isaac in his arms. Moses wandered the desert for 40 years, watching his own people struggle, before God finally used him to deliver Israel. And Jesus, the Son of God himself, waited 30 years in quiet obedience before his public ministry began. If God didn't rush them, why do we think he'll rush our process? These stories aren't just in the Bible to inspire us, they're there to prepare us, to remind us that delay does not mean denial, that God's silence doesn't mean absence, that when nothing seems to be happening, he's still working. God's delays are not God's denials. They are divine appointments, preparation zones, soul gyms where our faith gets stronger, deeper, more durable. And if he made them wait, not to punish them, but to prepare them, he'll do the same for us. So the question isn't, how long must I wait? It's, what is God building in me while I wait? Because the waiting room is never empty, it's full of purpose. And when you wait on the Lord, your strength will be renewed. Not maybe, not possibly, it will be. That's a promise worth holding on to. That's the thing about God. He's far more interested in who you're becoming than how fast you get there. Because every dream, every blessing, every calling requires a version of you that's ready to carry it. And that version, it's forged in the quiet, in the stretching, in the hidden moments of waiting where no one's clapping, no one's noticing, and you're tempted to walk away, but don't. Because spectacular triumphs are always the result of unspectacular training. It's easy to admire the final chapter of someone's story, marriages that look joyful, ministries that flourish, businesses that thrive. But what we don't see are the early mornings, the late night prayers, the seasons of loneliness, the private obedience. God doesn't waste pain. He doesn't overlook faithfulness, and he certainly never skips the process. The truth is, waiting isn't a delay in your destiny. It's a necessary step in becoming who you're called to be. In the waiting, God works out our pride. He strengthens our resolve. He teaches us how to walk by faith and not by sight. And one day when the promise is fulfilled, you won't just be thankful for the blessing, you'll be thankful for the process that made you strong enough to carry it. So the waiting, it's not the punishment, it's the preparation. Embrace it, grow in it, let it shape you. Because God is not just preparing the promise for you, he's preparing you for the promise. So if you're in a season of waiting right now, don't resent it, redeem it. Don't just go through it, grow through it. You're not being forgotten, you're being formed. You're not being overlooked, you're being overhauled from the inside out. God sees you, he knows what he's doing. And when the time is right, the doors will open. Not because you forced them, but because you were faithful while they were closed. So today, I want to challenge you. Don't waste your waiting. Grow in it. If this message spoke to you, hit subscribe to stay rooted in faith and encouragement. Share this video with someone who feels like giving up. And in the comments, declare it by faith. I will wait on the Lord. Because that single sentence might be the seed of the greatest season in your life. Your wait is not in vain. Your breakthrough is not behind schedule. God is never late. He's right on time. Let's trust him together.